Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the webinar. We will be talking about tax filings and reporting on this somber evening. I'd like to start by giving a shout out to all the finance officers out there for taking on the job. It's a very important job. One of the two most essential jobs of a branch, and it's not a popular choice. So we really appreciate the fact that you've taken it on. And for our part, here at AUW California, we are committed to providing you educational resources. We do that through materials provided on our website, through these webinars that we've been presenting annually, through our board-to-board messages, and also through the individual messages you send with your questions. So again, today we'll concentrate on tax and government reporting because it's a very serious topic. It is the single thing that can get a branch into a lot of trouble if the tax filing and reporting is not done for 3 consecutive years, then the branch will lose its tax exempt status, which means that you become liable to pay taxes as a corporation, and so you have to actually file to reinstate the tax exempt status, which is also expensive. And it is an incredible amount of paperwork. So it's not something where a branch would want to be. So next slide, please. Okay, so this webinar is the third in our series. The very first one, which we did 2 years ago, on the roadmap for branch financial management, gave a breadth view, a broad view, not much depth, but covered all aspects of the job. Then last year, we went into the details of branch accounting and how to be a branch treasurer. And this year, we're going into the details of government filings. The recordings for the first 2 webinars are available on the website. And this last one will become available there in the next few days. Next slide, please. So we have a fantastic team presenting this webinar. So with me are the finance committee members. I'm the CFO of AUW California. And then Christine Ritter is the past president and a finance officer of Danville, Alamo, Walnut Creek branch. She is also, her background is engineering and business and marketing. Next, we have Roberto Schmalz, who is the treasurer of the CHAR branch, Citrus Heights American River. She is a professional tax accountant, CPA in her former life. Then Kathy Ford, who is the treasurer of the PVP branch, Palos Verdes Peninsula. She is also the tech treasurer and wears several other hats as well. She is also a professional accountant, CPA. And then last but not least, we have Carol Mcmillan, who is a new addition in California. She recently moved from New York, where she was a treasurer emerita, many years of treasurer job in the Westchester County, New York branch. She is also an adjunct professor of nonprofit management. So as you can see, we have a phenomenal team, and I'll be turning the webinar over to them very soon after these introductory remarks. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we get any further taxes, I'd like to find out a little bit about all of you. Tracy, could you put up the first poll question, please? Okay, can everybody read that? So could you all please pick one of the choices? What is your branch position, incoming treasurer, current treasurer, president, or just interested in topic? I cannot see it being filled, so I don't know whether that's done or not.
We have almost everyone,
Okay,
43 or 47, so we can probably end it now.
Yeah, can we see the results, please? Okay, so the majority, more than half, are current treasurers. We have 20% incoming treasurers and also another 20% president, and a few just interested in the topic. Well, welcome to all of you. Next question, please. Okay, so is your branch incorporated? Yes, no, or not so sure. So yeah, Tracy, please show us the results once you have the voting.
Yeah, and we've got almost everyone. Okay. Give it another second. It looks like it slowed down. So here you go.
Okay, so not incorporated, 42%, 30% incorporated, and 28% don't know. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful for us to know. Next question, please. Yeah, we're asking these questions because, you know, these aspects are covered in the presentation. So what's your branch's gross average annual revenue? Is it $50,000, more than that, or you're not sure?
That's what I thought the answers would be. You'll see in a minute. So we're almost done, about 90 something percent. And I think we're good now. And there you have it.
Okay, well, that's wonderful news, because most of our presentation assumed that that would be the case. And so that's what we're covering primarily. So really happy to see that. And finally, the last question. And thank you for your patience. Okay, so does your branch conduct raffles? Yes, no, or not sure?
Okay, I think it's done.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So that's just like a quarter of the branches represented here that conduct raffles and 3/4 don't. Okay, that's good to know. There's lots of extra paperwork that goes with doing raffles, so we will be going through some of that. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so to talk about back to taxes, you might be wondering, well, we're a tax exempt organization, so why do we have to worry about filing taxes? And the good news is that we don't pay taxes, okay? But the bad news is that doesn't exempt us from filing a ton of paperwork. And so we do have to do this annual reporting, keep showing that we are a nonprofit or at least a tax-exempt organization, and information about income and expenses. So here so what exactly is tax-exempt? And basically, the question is, can we do away with any kind of taxes? And it's only really income tax based on income, which is to be used for our stated tax-exempt purposes. So we are a gender equity organization. So any activities we undertake for furthering our mission of gender equity for women and girls is tax exempt. And that means that the dues, with membership dues we receive and the donations we receive, which we use for these purposes, are exempt from taxes. That does not mean that we don't pay other kinds of taxes. If we sell something, then we are responsible for sales tax. If we own property, like some branches have a branch house, they have to pay real estate taxes. If there were other kinds of income which is not being used for our stated purposes, then there is tax implications on that as well. So next slide, please. So then what do we need to fill? What forms, what paperwork is needed? And unfortunately, there is a ton of all that, especially our state government seems to require lots and lots of paperwork from us, even if the income of branches is not that high. We saw that everybody has under 50,000, but even so. So the IRS, that is more straightforward because all of you can ask National to file. But for California, there is forms to be filled out, the Secretary of State or the Franchise Tax Board. And those you have to do yourself because National won't do that for you. Then incorporated branches, I think there were 30% or so. They have this additional form to fill out, SI 100, every 2 years. And then there are these forms for the Attorney General's office, the registration renewal form, RRF1. Then there has been this new requirement of the Treasurer report. And that will hold for all of you because your branch revenue is 50,000 or less. And then for those that do raffles, they are required to fill these raffle forms as well. So as we into the webinar, that's what we'll be focusing and getting into for now. Next slide, please. For now, I'm going to take you through the website to show you where these where you can find these various forms. So I will this stop other screen sharing? Do you want to continue? That's what I say yes to that. Okay. So here we are. I hope everybody can see this. I have the AUW California website up here. And you can see that there are, for those who haven't been on this website before, there are these 2 levels of menus. And for branch officers, the one more useful is this menu level on top. And very important here is this second thing, branch tools, so which it has tools for many different aspects. Today, we will be focusing on finance, both from the top, branch and IBC finance. So you go there. All right, why is it not doing anything? All right, there we go, I got impatient. Okay, so this is where all the information resides. I want to also mention to you that we are in the process of reorganizing the website. There still is a lot of great information here, and the information may increase a little, but it's mostly more a matter of how it's going to be organized. We hope to provide even easier access. Anyway, so here, if you click here, you'll be able to find information about membership dues. In this section, it's a lot of resources for branch treasurers, various examples, and so on. We go further down. This one is the webinar, which on how to be a branch treasurer, about the accounting guide. This is the other, with the very first webinar we did, the roadmap one, which talks a little bit about all the different responsibilities of branch treasurers. You can also find fundraising information, but today we are going to concentrate on this one, financial documents and deadlines. This is where everything to do with taxes resides. So let me just quickly go through that, because the various forms will be covered more in other parts of the talk. So here is a checklist of all the different forms and the deadlines. This one is if you want to ask National to file, we will need to update this link to the new hub. Then if you want to do these IRS filings yourself, this is where you get the forms. For the California filings, you get the form here. So I'm going over it very fast. You'll have to spend time yourselves to go over various things, but it's just to let you know that it's all on this one page where you find reference information about the various forms. So this is the new CTTR1, which is the Treasurer Report form. Then there is a video for how to fill it. And this is, you can download the form. Similarly, for the RRF1 form or the registration renewal form, again, there's a video for how to fill it out and where you can get it. Moving further, if your branch has never registered with the Attorney General's office, then this one takes you to the CT1 form to register there. This is the SI 100, which was for the incorporated branches, has to be filed every other year. So you access it there. And finally, there's this entity status letter. And this has to do with, it gives you a letter that the branch is registered with the state and is in good standing. And this is needed if your branch holds raffles and has to fill out those raffle forms, then this is one of the pieces of information that is needed there. So with that very quick overview of this page, Tracy, can I get back to the slides, please? Okay, next slide, please. So we're ready to get started now. You know where the forms reside. And now we're ready to get started with the filling details about how to fill out each of these forms, which is what the remainder of the webinar will be about. So we'll start out with the RRF1 and CTTR1 because those are the ones we receive most questions about. After that, go over the SI 100, then the raffle reporting forms, and finally the 990 and 190, the ones to IRS and the Franchise Tax Board 990 and 199 ends. And then we will break a couple of times for questions and discussions. So next slide, please. So with that, I think I'd like to pass on to Chris and Roberta to talk about filling out RRF1 and CTTR1.
Hello, everybody. I'm Roberta with the long COVID hair, so I didn't look much like the picture that was up there. Tonight, we're going to talk about filling out forms. To do that, we need to have financial statements. So how do we get to financial statements? Well, all year long, we've been recording transactions, and the next slide that we're not going to go over in detail tells you the transactions that were used to result in these financial statements. It's a set of two. There's the statement, there we go. There's the statement of activities, which is how you did over a period of time. This is year one. And there's the statement of financial position, which is a snapshot of what you look like at year end. So let's just spend a couple minutes looking at this information because this is the information that's going to go on the forms that we're going to talk about tonight. So we have revenues from branch dues, program income, we did some fundraising, and we have total revenue of $9,700. We have operating expenses, insurance, postage, so on and so forth, to the tune of $1,315. Our fundraising activities cost us something, so those are the fundraising expenses. And then we have program expenditures, which includes sending $3,000 to our local college for scholarships. So total expenses are $7,615. If we were in the for-profit world, this would be our profit of $2,085. In the nonprofit nomenclature, it's excess revenue over expenses. Our statement of financial position tells us what we have, So we have some money in checking, savings, we have a venue deposit, so we have total assets of $14,375. We have a liability of $1,890, which leaves us net assets of $12,485. Our net assets plus our liabilities equal $14,375, which is really a good thing, because if you're doing the accounting correctly, you want your assets equal to your liabilities and net assets. Before we leave this, I want to call your attention to a few things. Number one, notice that raffle income and raffle expenses are separately stated. We're going to need that information when Carol talks about how to fill out the raffle forms. I also want to mention that the revenue income is gross. Remember, we're looking for gross receipts under $50,000. So if we have a function where it costs $100 for a ticket, but the cost of the dinner that you get is $40, our gross income is $100, not the $60 net. So we're going to be recording everything gross here. I want to call your attention to the fact that there is no national due income or California due income. Excuse me, that is not branch income. That's a pass-through. We talked about that in our last webinar about how to record transactions. I want to call your attention to just a couple other things. We have a venue deposit for $1,500. This is money we paid for a venue for an event that we're going to hold next year. So it's not this year's expense, it's next year's expense, and we put it here for the time being. We also have something called deferred branch dues. This is money we're collecting now. It's May. We've been hopefully collecting due income for the last couple of months. And it is for memberships that begin July 1st of the following year. So we're going to put here, and next year we'll take it over here and put it into income. As I mentioned, excuse me, the transactions that got us to these financials are on the next slide. I'm not going to go over them in detail. I just wanted to put them here to prove that we didn't make up the numbers. So Chris, with all of this wonderful information, what do we do with it?
Well, now we get to start filling out some forms. And I want to just give you a little guided tour of how these forms in general work before we get started. So this happens to be the RRF1 form. And if you look way up here in the corner, see State of California, RRF1. Normally this is when we say the RRF1 form or the CTTR1 form, it's usually listed up here in the upper left corner. So this one happens to be the first thing that you would do as a branch, which is register yourself with the Attorney General of California as a charitable organization. So if you see, the first thing we're going to look at up here is there's different parts of this form. There's some demographic data up at the top. And then there's some fees we have to pay in the middle. And then they want to know some information about our branch. Here's some financial information. And then there's some questions we need to answer. So we'll go through each of these areas separately. And we'll go more in detail on this one since much of this is repeated in the future. So everyone knows their name, pretty much their names and addresses, so forth. So we won't dwell on that. What you might not know are these three pieces of information over here with the blue circle. One is the state charity registration number, which is given to you by the Department of Justice. The Secretary of State. And then we have the corporation or organization number and a federal employee ID number. So most of you are working in a branch where you've been filing taxes all along. So this would simply be on the form from last year. But if you don't have it, you can go to this particular website here, the Department of Justice, and there's a registry where you can type in your branch name and fill out a report, which will have in the header all of these numbers. And it will also have a history of all the forms you have filed with the state of California. So this is a really great resource. I really suggest that you bookmark this website because it's just a wonderful way. If you send a form in, you want to make sure they got it, you can look and see whether it's been recorded in their registry. So it's a wonderful history and a good way to check that your forms are getting where you think they're going. So let's now take a look at this one. where the next thing we have to do is pay them some money. So since we're pretty much less than $50,000, most of us, we're going to send them $25. You can see that right there. So you include a check for $25 when you submit this form. So the next section now is this a small section here, but it wants some financial information. So let's take a look at where we will get that information. I'm going to blow out that little part of the form right here on this page. So the first thing they want to know is what's your total revenue? And this is in yellow. We said it before, Roberta explained that was $9,700. And that's simply the number here that says the total gross revenue. So that's pretty easy to find. The second thing they might want to know about is non-cash contributions. So these, if you're reporting, if you have big contributions of non-cash that report in your revenue, you would put out what subset of your non-cash, of your revenue is non-cash, and that would go right here. We don't have any in our example. The third thing they want to know is how many assets do you have? So this is our $14,375 from our statement of financial position, our total assets. Program expenses, you might think are these program expenses over here, but when you read the detailed instructions on how to fill out this form, it says if your branch revenue is less than $50,000, you should leave that blank. So it's a little something you wouldn't necessarily know. So just make sure you don't have to fill that in. If you rank more than $50,000 in revenue, then you would put in your program expenditures, which are the things that you paid scholarships to or somehow funded your mission with. Lastly, they want to know your total expenses, which in this case is right down here, $7,615. So that number goes in here. Backing up, we want to also just be mindful of the accounting period, which I believe you all know. All of our branches have an accounting period from July 1st to June 30th of the following year. So that's where this information would go. Okay, so now we've figured out what to put into the financial section. Let's take a look at some of the questions now they want us to answer. So you probably cannot read these. I don't expect that you will be able to, but the thing to realize, I've circled in red here, is all the questions must be answered. And if you answer yes, then you have to, any of them, you have to attach a separate page explaining your details and why you answered yes. So we anticipate you'll answer no to almost every question. The exception that we find commonly in our branches is if you are conducting raffles. So I think about 25 or 30% of you said you were doing raffles. So here's what you do. Question number 6, during the reporting period, did the organization hold a raffle for charitable purposes? And we're going to check yes. And then we're going to attach a schedule with the dates of the raffles. And it's just a piece of paper that looks like this. It says your branch, your number, what is the time period, and say it's an attachment to this form RRF1 and just write when your raffle was. That's it. If you've done more than one raffle, you can put them all in the same attachment. So just different dates. So let's take a look at what we've got. Oh, back up. So I guess that's it. Roberta?
It's not
well
it.
Done. So turn it in.
It's Next. Not it. It's it for the RRF1.
That's it.
But as Rolly mentioned, back in 2020, they figured out that they don't know much about smaller branches defined as less than 50,000 of gross receipts. So they decided to design another form to get all sorts more information. This is what the blank form looks like. It's the same identification that Chris talked about. She told you how to get these numbers if you don't happen to have them. The accounting period is the same, July 1st, 21 in our example to June 30, 22. And then they have these strange names, a balance sheet, a revenue statement. I cannot understand why they don't use the nonprofit accounting terms. But what we know as the balance sheet is the statement of financial position, and the revenue statement is the statement of activities. So let's figure out how we're going to fill all of this out. Let's do the balance sheet first. So here's our CT. I probably should have mentioned that the name of the form is the CTTR1, or the code for it. Here's that portion of the form. Here's our statement of financial position, and we can just see color coded. First, they want to know cash, $8,375. Then they want to know savings, which is $4,500. We don't have any investments. If we had a brokerage account, it would go there. If we owned real property, it'd go here. And then, other assets. Well, we have that venue deposit. So that must be another asset because it doesn't go anywhere else. Over on the liability side, we don't have any accounts payable. We don't pay anybody any wages, but we do have this deferred branch dues, but there's no category for it over here. So we put it in other. And we're going to find out pretty soon that anytime you put something in other, it means send us an attachment also describing other. Let's go on now and look at the income statement, where those numbers came from. Here's again a snippet of our CTTR1. It's called, they want the revenue statement. We know it's statement of activities. Our dues income, our cash contributions, $2,100. In our example, we don't have any non-cash contributions. We have program revenue of $2,000. We held an educational program to educate voters on the ballot propositions. That's what that was about. And then we held some special events that generated $5,600. We don't have any other revenue. So all of our revenue fit nicely into the boxes. Total revenue, $9,700. Our fund, they want to know about compensation of officers, staff, and here we have fundraising expenses. So this is the expense that related to the luncheon that we held to generate scholarship income. They've called out a few other types of expenses, supplies and postage, insurance, and then as you would guess, a bunch of our expenses fall into other expenses, meaning we're going to need an attachment to describe all of these in kind of the pale orange down here. So let's go take a look at that attachment. Here's our statement of activities, our statement of financial position, and this is the attachment that is going to go with the CTTR1. And you see that it shows our venue deposit, other assets, our deferred revenue, other liabilities, and all of our other expenses for a total of $4,920. Let's now take a look at how all of this looks when it is put together. Oops, I went too far.
Too far, back up. There you go.
Okay, there we go. Here is our completed form, CTTR1 and attachments, the annual treasurer's report that starting February of 2020, all branches with under 50,000 of gross receipts, meaning that they don't get a complicated tax return that Kathy's going to talk about later. They want at least this much financial information. And here's our attachment with it. So, Chris, are we done yet?
Oh, no, there's more.
No?
But only for those of you who are incorporated, which I think was 30% or so. So this is from the Secretary of State called the SI 100. And this is what you file initially when you incorporate your branch. And then you need to file it again every 2 years thereafter. So it doesn't have a deadline that can be set externally. It matters. Its deadline for filing is whenever you first incorporated your branch. It's every 90 days after that, every 2 years. So how do you go about doing this? Well, the first thing you do, it's a two-step process, really. There's an introductory page, and the link is right here on the screen. And then you'll see just a landing page that looks like this. You don't need to read it at this point. It's just saying, here you are, and what's your branch. But at this point, you can choose two directions to go to fill out the form. If you click up here where I'm pointing, you can fill it out online. And then you'll just enter all the information onto your computer and hit submit. Or if you prefer, you can download a PDF form that looks like this. And for purposes of this seminar, I downloaded the form so we can see how it looks a little better than trying to go through the pages online. So let's turn our attention to the form. As we said, it's from the Secretary of State, the SI 100. Here's its letters up here. Here's how often you have to file it. And you have to remember to send them $20 when you send this in. So always look for these fees. They're sometimes not very large type on the forms, but still keep an eye out for that. So the next thing you'll need is your corporation name and your state entity number, which you can get as we learned how before. Your business address comes next, and you'll notice you cannot use a PO box. So you have to choose either your treasurer's address, that's what we use in our branch, or it could be your president or some other long-term member who's going to be around for 2 years is usually a good choice. The next, they want to know about the officers. And since this is our officers are usually 1 year in their office, it's hard for us to know in 2 years who's going to be in the office. So just put the current officers in this section. Finally, on number 5 here, see service of process. This is one person who's going to be the correspondent, the liaison for you with the Secretary of State about this information. So this person is called an agent. And again, this needs to be a person, and they have to have a street address. So you need to choose your treasurer or typically the same person that you'd put here for your one of your other contacts could go in here. But realize that this information is actually available to anyone online. So it's available to the public, so your name and address will be showing. Finally, there's an email that you'll need to have so they can contact someone in your branch if any questions come up about this. And then the agent, so they've got the agent's email address and so forth, and they will send a postcard reminder that you need to fill out this form again when it's almost 2 years and time to fill this out. So choose your agent wisely. Whoever will remember in 2 years why they got this postcard. So that's pretty much it. It's just demographic information. There's no financial information on here. So we've covered quite a bit. Shall we stop for some questions?
The presentation so far has prompted several questions. So I'll just start at the top. When pertinent, can you distinguish between any differences between a 501c3 versus a 501c4 organizations? This particular question comes from a branch that is a 501c4.
Roberto, would you like to take that one, please?
Sure. On the forms that we've gone over, there is no distinction. We're going to see when we get to the, I think it's the Raffle reports, you actually have to check a box regarding whether you're a C3 or a C4. But on these, there's no distinction made.
Then how can the branch find out if it's incorporated?
Well, you can go to the Secretary of State website and type in the branch name, and then it will show you a list of all the incorporated branches. So if your branch is incorporated, it will be on the list. If it's not, they won't say you're not incorporated, but it will say that you're on the list, and you can search in that way.
Where does revenue from the investment account go in the assets section? Money is taken from the investment account to pay college scholarships.
You want me to take
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so the revenue, let me go back and look at the CTTR1. Give me a second. There's a line item on the CTTR1 that says investments. So that would be your dividend type income from brokerage accounts and that type of thing.
Okay. And our branch has scholarship funds with Tech Trek funds with SPF, and do they report them on the RRF1 form?
Kathy, would you like to take that one on the Tech Trek funds? Anyone else? Let me see. Lost the question here.
Do you want me to repeat it, or?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so our branch has scholarship funds with and Tech Trek funds with SPF, and do I report them on the RRF1 form?
No, they are going to SPF. You would only be reporting your branch's funds collected by the branch. Now, if you collected funds for Tech Trek as a 501c3, you would report it. But typically, if you're not running the donations for Tech Trek through your bank accounts and they're just being remitted onto a camp treasurer and onto SPF, you would not be reporting them.
And if a branch is closing, whose address should be used on the SI 100?
Probably doesn't matter whether they file it or they don't. So I wouldn't bother filing it at all.
Are there any filing deadlines for these forms?
Okay, so those are again on the website that I showed you, they're there, but I'll repeat it. Like for the form where you ask National to file your IRS 990N, it's October 15. For all the other forms that you're filing, it's November 15. The only difference is the Raffle reporting forms, which is a bit more complicated because they have a concept of a Raffle reporting year. And their year is September 1 to August 31. And then you have to let them know that you're going to hold a raffle 60 days before the first raffle you hold in the year. And then you have to put a form after the raffles have been held, which is October 1st of the following year. So that's really complicated. We do capture it on one of our slides later on.
And then lastly, are donations from branch investment account to national included in income?
Donations
Are donations from branch investment account to national included in income?
No, it's not income for the branch. It's an expense for the branch.
But accumulating that money to be able to put it in the investment account is going to be branch revenue.
Right.
I guess you're pulling it out of the investment into your checking account and paying it out. But I mean, on your, like you'll be reporting it on your statement of financial position. You report all the the amount of money you have in the investments, and that gets decreased, but it is not income to the branch, no.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes the questions for now.
Are there anything else anybody on the committee, any of our presenters would like to add to any of those?
Yes, it seemed like there were a couple of questions about moving money between an investment account and a cash account. So we talked about that, I believe, at our webinar a year ago, how to report transactions, and it would just be decrease investments, increase cash, and there's no revenue associated with that kind of a transfer.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I think we can go back to the presentation. Okay, so this is over to, let's see, this is over to Kathy now. No, it's over to, no, actually we're going back to, this is the slides, right? I think we're going back to Carol's part. Chris, I think we're going back to.
Right.
Right.
Okay, just a second here. Okay. Carol, you should be able to control it now.
Okay. Let's see. There we go. All right, so we've talked a little bit about raffles. Let's go into that just a little bit more. As you saw, about a quarter of you do conduct raffles. And as we saw on Chris's initial form, that the state wants us to say right up front, what happened there, that we are going to be having a raffle. So a raffle is essentially a fundraising event in which participants buy a ticket and hope to win a prize. And it is actually quite regulated in California. California wants to be sure that if the charity is holding a raffle, that most of the money raised in the raffle is going to go to the purpose of the charity. So they have a 90-10 rule that at least 90% of the revenue from the raffle must go to the charity. So let's look at this application form. And there, okay, there we got my hand going around. And as we saw on the other forms, back up in the corner, it's going to describe the NFP 1 that we're going to apply to participate in a raffle. And we talked about the idea that some branches are 501c3, some branches are 501c4. And one of the pieces of information that you need in order to submit this application is what's called an entity status letter, which comes from the Franchise Tax Board. And it is saying, yes, you are authorized as a tax-exempt entity to conduct a charitable raffle. And if you're a 501c3, you're going to check the box for charities. And if you are a 501c4, you're called a social welfare organization. So those, and that information will be on this Franchise Tax Board letter. And as Rolly showed you, the link on how to get access to that if you don't have a copy in your files is right there on the California website. We also had mentioned that the Raffle Year is different than any other year. The Raffle Year considered by the state is September 1st through August 31st. And the requirement is that if you're going to hold a raffle, that you apply at least 60 days ahead of the proposed raffle. But you can apply for multiple events at the same time. And that's actually what our sample organization has done. They are submitting this application, and you can see they have a number of dates that they put down. So if you have a raffle typically at every branch meeting, go ahead and apply for all of the proposed dates. And just be sure that you're applying at least 60 days ahead of the first date. So when you apply, again, you're going to submit the application, a copy of this Franchise Tax Board letter, here's a sample right here, and a $30 fee. And now to the report. So we saw our sample organization. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. That we did conduct a raffle, and we sold our tickets of $600, and we had a $20 expense, which was probably for the prize for the raffle. And we're going to put that onto our report form. So here we have the report form, and the year, you're giving the year, and then the financial information. One thing is that if you do hold multiple raffles, you submit the report for all of them at the same time. And the report is due by October 1st, following the conclusion of that raffle year, which ended on August 31st. And in our case, remember that we have to be sure that at least 90% of the proceeds are going to our charitable purpose. And we're well within that with $600 raised and $20 expended. That's about 96% of the proceeds. So that's what we have to say about raffles. And Kathy, I think now we're back to you.
Yes. So we are going back to the slides. Good. All right, so we have a couple of forms that are very similar. One's goes to the IRS and one goes to the Franchise Tax Board. So what you need to know about the 990N, this is the e-postcard, and again, it is an annual electronic filing for small exempt organizations, those with total gross revenues $50,000 or less. It's an information return that's filed online. There's no paper to this one. So next slide. What is important when you're going online to file is to have all the information you need to input when you're filing. So that includes the employer identification number, which all these have been talked about, the tax year. And remember, for AAUW branches, the filing year for the form is the beginning of the fiscal year. So for example, the 2021 990N covers July 1, 21 to June 30, 22 for AAUW branches. And if you were filing this yourself, you wouldn't be filing it until November 15th, 2022, even though the year started July 1, 2021. So you also have to have the legal name and mailing address of your branch, any other names the branch uses, the name and address of the principal officer, usually the branch treasurer submitting the report, a website address if the branch has one, and confirmation only that the organization's annual gross receipts are 50,000 or less. So this number again was 9,700 in the sample statement of activities, but you simply need to confirm that gross receipts are no more than 50,000. And also a statement that the organization has terminated or will be terminating if that's the case. So next slide. So how do you meet this filing requirement? There's the real easy way. Request AAUW National to include your branch under the national filings. And the deadline to submit to national is October 15th to give them the chance to hit the November 15th deadline. Right now, as you can see, the AAUW California website is still referring to the old MSD. So if you were going to make this request, which you can use the Hub membership database. Log on, go to My Affiliations and click the blue button to the right of your branch name to view the options. Choose Tax Information, then click Add New Tax Details and complete the form they provide. And the principal officer for this form, again, is generally the branch treasurer. You should receive a confirmation from National that your 990N was accepted. So you can save this document, you can print it out as well. Next slide. So part 2 on filing, meeting the filing requirement, it's not quite as easy, but you file directly online with the IRS. Now you have until the final deadline of November 15th. You go to financial documents and deadlines on the AAUW website, California website, and click on File e-Postcard Form 990N now. Next slide. Now, when you go into that, you are going to see various instructions and a user guide. If it's never been registered before, you'd see all the information for doing that. All filers have to register initially when they file their Form 990M, and it's a one-time registration. You won't be asked to do this again, but be sure you create a record of the user ID and the password, which are needed to file in subsequent years. Also, when you register, you file a site image and a site phrase, which will be presented when you go online and input the user ID and password. So it would be good to note those down as well, so you know that you're seeing all 4 pieces of security information for your branch. So how do you print your Form 990N, assuming you want a printed record? When you electronically filed your 990N, you were given an opportunity to print the form on the confirmation page. If you didn't print it at that time, you can't go back into the site and print it later. But if your Form 990N was accepted, your organization's electronic filing will be listed on tax exempt organization search, and you can print that information for your records. Next slide. So now all of you said that your total branch revenues, gross revenues are under 50,000 or 50,000 or less. So you wouldn't have to do this, but if they were, if all of a sudden something happens and your branch has significantly more revenues, you would need to file Form 990. And you again go to financial documents and deadlines on the AAUW California site and click Get Form 990. And that is going to be a little bit more extensive if you ever have to file that. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about the California version, the Ftb Form 199N, also referred to as an e-postcard because it is simply an electronically filed information return for small tax exempt organizations. Same requirement, 50,000 or less can file the California e-postcard, Ftb Form 199N. And you have to file this one directly. For some reason, AEW National doesn't want to file these state returns. The deadline is same as the actual deadline for the 990. It's November 15th after your fiscal year end. Next slide. So again, you want to capture the information that will have to be input for filing this return. That's your branch entity number, either the California organization number or California corporation number. We've discussed those numbers and where to get them. The branch name and mailing address, the accounting period for your fiscal year, which is going to be July 1 through June 30. The FEIN again, gross receipts. This time you have to actually input the number. And again, the number is 9,700 in the sample statement. So you report your actual branch gross receipts on this form. And then the principal officer name, address, and phone number. And this normally will be the treasurer who's filing the return. Next slide. Now, so you file online directly. You can access the form and instructions on the AEW California website under financial documents and deadlines. Click on File Form 199N now and log in using your branch entity number. California is much simpler about this. It's just the entity number. And basically you could find that if you did a search on it. You have 20 minutes to complete each page. And if your session ends, you must start over. So make sure you have those 6 information points to input. You will receive a confirmation number for your records, and it confirms the information you input. It's proof that you successfully filed your e-postcard. Go ahead and print that, and you will have a written record of it. And then log out and close your browser to protect the security on the form. Next slide. So again, what if your branch revenues are greater than 50,000? Then you need to file Form Ftb 199. And similar to the 990, it's asking for more information, and including financial information, than the 199N. So here, for now, you have to actually go to ftb.ca.gov. You're going to the site to get the form. Click Forms, click Online. It's an online form. Input form number 199, then click Get Forms. The instructions, you can click on 199 booklet, HTML, and the instructions will display on your screen. And then for the form, click 199 form, and you can print it out or fill it out. Next slide. Any questions?
Yes, we have a few. What is the difference between a raffle and a silent auction?
Shall I take that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so basically a raffle, participants are buying a ticket for the possibility of winning. A silent auction is something in which there are a variety of items and everyone who wants to buy an item can make a bid on it. So it's essentially a sale as opposed to a prize.
Yes.
And go ahead. Was there another?
Yeah, I think maybe we can also elaborate. Like a raffle is seen as gambling, right? Yeah. So you do not get any, like there is no tax exemption for buying raffle tickets. So
yeah, good.
Anyone else like to add anything to that?
And then does the 199N accept a post office box for address?
Yes, it does. So that makes it simpler.
And then there's another question there is about filing the 990N to have national AUW file 990N, do you have to tell them each year, or do you have to do it once and they will always do it? No.
Yes, you have to tell them each year.
And please repeat how to get the branch entity number.
You can look up, as I said, if you go to the Treasury, here, it's called Tax Exempt Organization Search. If you go to, oh, this is, excuse me, that one I think is listed at the very beginning, where you can get all the branch numbers required.
It's on the second, third, or fourth page of the presentation if you download it.
Right.
It's there.
I think that is really one of the early numbers identified with the RF1. And that's the rctdoj.ca.gov.
And then lastly, so branches are able to do silent auctions without any problem.
They don't have to deal with the 90-10 rule that you have for Raffles. So that's like one of the restrictions with Raffles is that 90% of everything has to be towards, like, you know, cannot be the price that you're giving. Whereas silent auction is you are buying something essentially. And then I think the related piece of the silent auction would be that you don't have that kind of those forms to fill out. Like, are there any forms associated with silent auctions the way there are with Raffles? Does anyone know?
I think the issue with Raffles that it's treated as gambling in California, and they're slapping more restrictions on it as a result versus purchasing an item.
And that concludes our questions.
Okay, so I think we just have a few more things to go over, especially like we have some suggestions for best practices for first-time treasurers. Carol, would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is, we're now well into May. And so for those of you, and let's see, that was about a quarter of you are incoming treasurers. So you're going to want to, develop a plan for how to get ready. So meet with the outgoing treasurer, review their accounting practices and all the past filings, get those numbers, go ahead and download the information so that you have easy access to all of the relevant information. And then we've mentioned this a couple of times, various things that have usernames and passwords, and there are so many of them. So make a plan, not only the bank account, everybody thinks about changing the signatures on the bank account, but if you have a PayPal account where you collect money on your website, also the Hub member database, there's probably access to that, and that has to be given by the branch president, who is going to have access to that database. Social media, the US Postal Service, and also, as Kathy just mentioned, if you have created an account for filing with the IRS, that you want to have access to all of those usernames and database. As I was talking about, since the Raffle Year is going to start on the 1st of September, if you do have raffles, when are they going to be? Should you go ahead and submit the application? Also understand if your branch is a 501c3 or 501c4 organization, and what are the implications of that in terms of how you record your income and what kind of tax deductions are available. A few branches we know own property. What are the tax implications for that? And absolutely review the website and all of the other webinars. I can tell you, as Rolly said, I was a treasurer in another state And I just, when I got here and saw how much information was on the state website, I thought, sorry, could you say that again? I would have been so thankful for it. Then finally, by August 31st, hopefully the closed books have been completed with the outgoing treasurer, and you're going to review those. But since you are now the current treasurer, you're the one who's going to fill out and submit the appropriate information to the IRS and California on the forms that we've just been discussing. So please know that you have a lot of help available to you, but getting ahead of the game is certainly one of the key best practices. Okay, Rolly.
Okay, thank you. So can we have the next slide, please? So just some closing remarks, and I also see that there are a couple of questions have come in. So once I'm done with these closing remarks, we can take those questions. So basically, what have we covered today? We have covered how to fill out a bunch of forms, the IRS forms, 990N, the Secretary of State forms 199N, the SI 100 for incorporated branches, and then the Attorney General's office forms, the RRF 1 and the CTTR 1, the Treasurer Report form. And also we've gone over raffle reporting for those branches that do raffles. Next slide, please. And keep in mind the deadlines. There was the October 15 one to have national file the 990N for you. For all others is November 15th. If you're doing 990N yourself, and for the 199N, RRF, CTTR. And then remember, raffles are a little crazy, so they have their year, September 1 to August 31. So before you do the very first raffle of that raffle year, you have to count 60 days before that raffle, and you need to have submitted that first form, the NRP 1. And then once that raffle year is over, then you have to submit the second one by October 1. And that, like if you had declared an intent to hold raffles, then even if you've ended up not holding any raffles, you still have to submit that NRP2 and let them know that you didn't hold any raffles. So that's about the deadlines. And next slide, please. So finally, just to remind you that there's a wealth of information on the website. So there's the link, and also keep up with the board-to-board messages, and always available to take your questions, or if you have any requests for any additional information, there's my email address. And now I think maybe the team can come back. We can take these last couple of questions that have been asked. So from here is, please confirm that silent auction items are taxed or not taxed, and how to handle this. So who wants to go? Roberta, you want to take that one?
I'll take a stab at it. I'm not sure about taxed or not taxed. If we're talking about deductions, the donor of a silent auction item, I give my branch a painting to auction off. I would get a deduction for the lesser of the cost or fair market value. So if it's, appreciated, I only get what I paid for it. And if it's depreciated, I get what its value is. If I'm the bidder and I win the painting, then my deduction is going to be what I paid less the value of the painting. And this is subjective. There's a lot of information on the internet about how you value things. Comparable savings or comparable sales of the items is a good way to do it. Anybody want to add anything to that?
So when you say deductions, Roberta, you mean that that's for a 501c3 branch, right?
Thank you very much. If I was giving it to a 501c3 branch, if I'm giving it to we are a 501c3, which is why I used my painting to my branch. But if our branch used to be a 501c4, and then there would be no deduction for that.
And also for the person who is purchasing it is the same thing, doesn't get a deduction.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying that.
So one of the things I think that the questioner also asked about sales tax, and we're researching that, could we say, because it's unclear as to whether sales tax needs to be collected on silent auction purchases. So we'll get back to you on that after we've done a little more work on it.
Okay, so next question is, National sent the entire state of California list out to everyone in our branch. That info should be confidential. I received it today too, and I also found it actually quite unhelpful because it gave the names of members without giving their branches. So as far as the state was, so I think, yes, this is again adding to, all these, well, should we call them teething troubles of our new hub? But it certainly was not a very satisfactory way of distributing the information, and was also not helpful because for a state of nearly 10,000 members to get individual member names like that is not helpful. Without the name of the branch was not helpful to me at all. So yes, next question was, what is the process to let National know that our bank account has changed? Why do we need to let National know that our bank account has, oh, you mean like for the deposit? Okay,
right.
Okay, for the direct deposit of membership dues. I don't know that I have an answer to that. I think you would, I guess it's to send a message to Connect or let Angie Cooper know. I think let Angie Cooper know. I can't think of any other answer to that. Anybody?
I think that is the answer at the moment.
Yeah. And they may put a feature, I would think, on the hub, but at this point, yes. Contact her directly.
Yeah, and then the last comment is, will you contact National about this? I guess that's meant about the distribution of the lists in those forms. Yes, I think so, but I think I will wait for the dust to settle a little bit because there's just too much going on, but yeah, I can find out whether it's going to stay that way forever or is likely to change. Yes, I've got sent messages and got no response. The only thing I can suggest for getting answers is to attend the office hours that National holds every Thursday at 12:30 our time. And actually those questions therefore are getting bigger, those sessions are getting longer and longer because most people are realizing that that's the one way there is of getting answers to questions. I think lately, we also started putting out like a frequently asked questions list, which is, hopefully more and more people will start finding those FAQs helpful and won't need to go to the office hours. But yeah, I guess that's the end of the questions.
Okay, so it sounds like we've answered all the questions that have come in the Q&A, and I want to thank the panel and especially Raleigh for holding this webinar. And just a reminder to let everybody know, this will be this has been recorded and it'll be on the website within a few days, exactly where you registered for this webinar. There'll be a link where you can view this webinar again, if should you need it. There's a lot of information in there and you might want to reference it again and again and again. But I want to thank everybody for coming and hope you have a good evening. And thank you for now.
Okay, yes. Thank you all for coming and to the panel and to the fabulous communications team. So.